Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric. In my last video, I showed how I took a braid of yellow and I carded it into these fluffy roll logs. I now have an entire bin over here of the 4-ounce braid already carded. And I thought I would do a little bit of a video showing the spinning of it. I was thinking, it's been a while, I believe, since I tried to show the spinning, the plying, both processes of the creating of the yarn. So I thought, why not? Let's spin a bit of yellow and share it. So, as I said in my last video, I wanted to take this 4-ounce braid that I dyed up for Tour de Fleece, and I wanted to spin it in a woolen prep, in a woolen spun yarn to get what should be a true woolen yarn, as opposed to a worsted yarn. And oftentimes I get more of a worsted yarn, or even sometimes a semi-woolen versus a true woolen. But I have taken the time, I have turned my roving into fluffy roll logs, and I'm trying to do a bit of a long draw. At the beginning of the spinning, when I'm first starting to get the yarn onto the bobbin, it is tugging a little, the bobbin is pulling the fiber quite a bit onto the bobbin. To explain, I have a double drive. There's one very long band that goes around this wheel, but it's twisted in the middle to create a figure 8. Part of it is going over the whirl, part of it is going over the bobbin, and by doing that, it makes it so that it wraps on to the bobbin. I like my double drive configuration as opposed to the Scotch tension that my other wheel is set up for. My e-spinner is set up with a Scotch tension, and my Sonata is set up for a Scotch tension. I like the Scotch tension a lot for plying my fibers, which is why my Sonata is perfect for that. It only has a Scotch tension option, and my e-spinner only has a Scotch tension option. But I really prefer the double drive for most of my spinning. It is great for spinning a very nice fine fiber, which I could be doing. I'm trying to decide how this wants to spin. And as I was saying, it's got a lot of take up right now. And I could back off the take up. I could move it a little bit so it's not as much tension on this. It would back it off. But I have my wheel set up for another spin that I've been doing. And so I don't want to do a lot of adjustment because it's in its sweet spot. So I'd rather have it just tug a little bit too much in the beginning, but keep my sweet spot. I know. For those of you that are spinners, you understand what I'm saying. It's not about that it's hard it's not a hard process adjusting my wheel. This is a fabulous wheel and it's easy to adjust. It's more about simply not wanting to mess with something that's working well. So I'm probably spinning a little bit thicker than I could with this spin. But again, this is just a fun spin, a relaxing spin, just trying to keep it low stress. I'm spinning yellow because in Tour de France, yellow represents the leadership jersey and the winner. And I always like to do a bit of a yellow in honor of the fact that this Tour de Fleece is inspired by those cyclists cycling in the Tour de France. So this is my yellow jersey inspired fiber for 2026. And I could spin it a bit finer if I backed off the take-up on the wheel. And now that I have started this, I think I'm going to do that really quickly. I am going to back off just a little bit. Let's see if that does. It's just about the distance between the mother of all and the wheel. It changes the amount of tension on my band, my drive band. That's a little bit less. I don't know if this is interesting watching. Normally I can talk a little bit more while I'm spinning, but I'm trying to get a feel. This is 100% merino roving that I've dyed, and it was so funny. The other day I was on Facebook and I was in the Tour de Fleece over on Facebook, that group that's over there, and the post that popped up was someone saying, okay, I've spun this fiber. I am so ready to move on to something else. They were also doing 100% merino roving braid, and it can be less than fun. I have suggested to my son that whenever using it, it's always nice if you can blend it with something else. If you have another fiber that you can blend with it, it changes the properties just a little bit. It is a soft. It is so next to skin soft. It's a wonderful fiber if you're wanting a next to skin soft. But it's not exactly I would say it's not exactly a joyful spin. It's a joyful fiber when it's spun, but it's not exactly a joyful spin to spin. And I think a lot of people get stuck in the mode of I need to do merino because they know, they recognize the name. It's the popular, it's what we see in our sock yarns a lot of times, blended with something else. We see a lot of merino out there. It is a good, soft, next to skin fiber. And so we see the name of it, so we're familiar with it. So we think we should spin it. And it is something that we can get in bulk. We can buy it easily. It's readily available in most locations. And that's why I have it, is I can buy it from a mill in a large amount because it is being sold to indie dyers who then sell on their dyed braids. So it is economical in that sense, in the fact that I can get it for a good price in a large amount already prepped. However, with that said, there are a lot of other breeds that are much more, I think, enjoyable to spin if you want to have just a relaxing spin. And I think there's a lot of other breeds that match the merino as far as its fine next to skin softness, that have other properties that make it more enjoyable for a hand spinner. I know that I have spun a lot of CVM, and I have a fleece that I can't wait to wash once it's not as hot. That is Periandel, which is beautiful long locks and another really nice next to skin softness that I had always liked with my CVM. So there are other fibers out there. There are a lot of other sheep breeds that you can get a longer lock, a little bit more ease for the hand spinner when it is a longer staple length as opposed to a short staple length. But when it all comes down to it, it's about finding the thing that gives you joy. And merino has never been anything that gives me a great deal of joy. Now, with that being said, I have a merino fleece out also waiting to be washed that I really do look forward to spinning. It has some fairly long locks. It is a lovely fleece, and I do look forward to spinning. And that's the other thing. I'm a bit of a hand process snob. My own preferences, not a problem with anybody else's. My own preferences lean towards the fibers that I have prepped myself, that I have washed, I've scoured, I have carded or combed. I really like working with the fleece. I like processing the fleece in the sense that I like being able to see what the fleece and locks look like in, before being washed. I like being able to decide how I want to process and how do I want to card? Do I want to just flick it open? Do I want to spin from the lock? So I am somebody who tends to lean towards preferring a hand processed, personally processed fleece. With that being said, I do occasionally buy roving and top from other vendors, and I've enjoyed spinning roving and top from other vendors. And when I have a roving or top that I have purchased, I decide if I want to spin it as it's prepped, or if I want to, like in this case of the yellow, do a different prep in order to make it a different type of finished yarn. And if I want to make it just a little bit easier. And while most of the time I don't take this effort to put it into roll logs, I'll just do what most people do, spin it from the braid, or, strip the braid down into sections. But every so often I will take the time to do this extra step and create the roll logs so that I can do a lovely long draw. So I think it's going to be a lovely 2-ply. It's definitely woolly. When you wrap it back around itself like that, you can get a sneak peek of what the finished 2-ply will look like. And I think this will be a nice 2-ply. It's funny because I do like a woolen yarn, but I so seldom ever truly get a woolen yarn because I don't take the time to make the roll logs. And I will say, it is a lot easier to get a nice, fluffy, airy woolen yarn when you do your long draw from a roll log. Yes, you can do the long draw from cloud, from a roving, but I do find it is a fluffier finished yarn. So that's what I'm aiming for. I want fluff. I want yellow fluff. I have to keep remembering to advance. When on this first, filling the bobbin for the first time, I always forget to advance before the yarn, before what's being wound on it moves and shifts. So I like to get a nice even spaced first wrap onto the bobbin, and that means I have to adjust more frequently than once I have done the first wrap. So that's me spinning. I'm going to sit here and enjoy a little TV. My cats have come around and hopefully won't knock the camera. I'll continue to do some recording, and I will probably add in a bit the plying, or probably do the plying. I'll probably save this video, get everything spun up into 2 singles, and then come back when I'm ready to start plying the 2 singles together. I think that will be a good yellow fiber part 2. So we'll see you when I'm ready to ply 2 singles. Have another bobbin. 2 singles together. We'll see you then. Until then, I'm just going to spin and let you watch me do some spinning. I have my singles spun and I'm ready to start plying. After having spun a little bit of the fiber for the earlier part of this video, I realized I hadn't divided my fiber into 2 sections. And it is oftentimes much easier, unless you're planning to do a chain ply for a 3-ply, it is much easier to divide your fiber into equal weights before you start spinning your singles, if you want to have them spread over multiple bobbins in order to have multiple plied yarn. There are uses for singles in the crafting world. Weaving can sometimes use singles. I remember when I first started spinning, I heard a lot of people discussing that you couldn't, that there was this information running around that said you couldn't use singles in your weaving projects, which was bizarre because anybody who had talked to archaeologists and anthropologists on old textiles would have told you that yes, singles do get used in weaving. To have single, and I think what they were trying to say is that singles were not strong enough to handle the warp. Well, yes, singles can be used as warp as well. There's some tricks and tips to using your hand spun singles as a warp. But keep in mind, it is more economical, time-wise, and potentially somewhat fiber-wise. But in a woven project, you are going to use a certain amount of fiber in order to create a piece of cloth. But economically, it is a lot faster to spin a single than it is to do a ply and then weave it. But I know that in the times that I have spun for weaving and wanted it for a weft, a warp rather than just for weft, I have taken a few extra steps to make it work better for my daughter, not me, because I don't tend to weave. Although I have to admit, I do have one project in which I have spun my weft, or spun my warp and my weft. Again, I'm not a weaver, but I have spun for the projects, and I have spun enough to know that I don't weave well. So what I'm going to suggest is, if you want to spin for something like weaving, and there's nothing wrong with going ahead and spinning and plying as I'm about to do today, but if you want to spin singles for weaving, I would really look into materials that talk about that. To really look into articles that people have written about spinning specifically for your weaving projects. You want a strong single that is not going to break apart. Now, as we get better and better with our spinning, our singles don't draft apart as much as when we're first starting. And we start to understand the construction of a strong single without having it become ropey. But there are some wonderful tips and tricks if you get into the weaving world that they talk about preparing your hand spun for the loom. That's just all I was going to say on it. I also wanted to really quickly also mention, I have been behind the scenes working on my fin sheep spin. This is a worsted spin that I am doing. I am not taking video of it because I am downstairs on my e-spinner watching TV in the evenings. But I have one bobbin full and I have a second bobbin about a third of the way full. I do not think I'm going to get all of my fiber onto 2 bobbins, but we'll see. You can tell bobbins come in different sizes. The bobbin that I'm actually putting this on typically will hold all of this fiber. This is 4 ounces, and depending on how I spin it, these bobbins are supposed to be able to hold 4 ounces. I very seldom have success getting more than 3 ounces on at a time. This time it's only 2. It should all fit on my jumbo bobbin on my Kromsky Sonata. The other thing I wanted to show, if you are unfamiliar with this process, is I have a Kate. My Sonata comes with something similar to this, just 2 prongs attached to the wheel, but it's down by my feet. And for both ease of videoing and a little bit more of a comfort for me, I'm raising the Kate up here. It is an untensioned Kate. And there are times when I do want a little bit of a tension on my Kate, and I do have a couple tension Kates, but this is just a simple wood plank with some holes drilled into it and some pegs put in, and it works really well for me. I like being able to do a 4-ply every so often, and so I like having a Kate that has the potential of holding 4 bobbins. I've tried to hook up the wheel to where you can see the fiber going on it. I do have to push it back just a little bit. I hadn't realized how close to the body I had pulled it in order for it to be in the camera view. Okay. And, whoops. Let's just move that over there. So when you are spinning your singles, you are spinning them in one direction. When you are spinning your ply, you then do the opposite direction. You are putting twist into the fiber as you spin it, and when you spin it the opposite direction, you're putting the opposite twist and it tends to lock together. So, are there guidelines as to whether you should spin it clockwise or counterclockwise, Z twist in essence, or S twist? Are there suggestions as to, are there ways of doing it to where you're putting more twist in one single, less twist in the other? Yes. And there are some wonderful books and material out there talking about making fun yarns and understanding the process of putting twist or removing twist from your spinning, your fiber. I am doing just a simple Z twist with an S ply, and you can see it's already going on. I am doing this by feel. I know there are people who will really watch the, let me come in close, the angle of the twist. I do it by feel, actually as much by sight. I'm just feeling for a nice even spacing. I know what the twist was that I put in my original fiber, and so I'm just trying to find a balance. It locks in together, and oh, I also have to remember, especially on this first run, I have to cover that bobbin center evenly, or the whole entire process can get wonky by the time I get 4 ounces on there. So am I going to show you the entirety of me plying this? Probably not. That would make for a very long video. What I will do is I will ply this and I will come back at the end and wrap up, maybe even with my finished hank of yarn. On that, I will say it. There's a lot of terminology for our balls of yarn, our collection of yarn. Skein is the most common in the United States terminology for how you buy your yarn. But you can also buy yarns in small balls. When we are making hand spun and we are nitty-knottying, which I don't even know where I put my nitty-knotty after that. When we are taking the spun fiber and wrapping it onto the nitty-knotty, which I showed in one of my other videos, and I honestly have no idea where, oh, I have it way over there. You can also wind it onto, I'll bring this over here, see if I can get it in, a swift, okay? When we take it off the bobbin and we put it on a nitty-knotty or on a swift to put some ties on it so that we can finish the process, I tend to finish my yarn by soaking it, even trying to just full it a little bit. I like it to really be finished, starting to bloom most of the time. If it is going to bloom, I like it to be good and solid, not very open and loose. Because I do knitting and crochet mostly with my yarn. I don't weave, and so I'd have a different process if I was weaving. But when we take it off the bobbin and we tie little ends around to hold it in place, it's technically a hank. It is not a skein. A skein has been wound in such a way that it usually has an end on the outside and an end on the inside that you could oftentimes pull out to pull the fibers from the inside. That is a technically or typically a skein, at least in the United States. This is often referred to as a hank. It is just indicating you have a section of fiber. In my case, I have a 2-yard nitty-knotty. My swift is actually only about a yard and a half, going one wrap around. And it indicates that this is not in a state that you want to just start knitting. It's just a hank of yarn that you then need to put into some sort of ball in order to be able to work with. Some people will use a center pull ball, and they will use something like this that is a ball winder to turn it into a center pull ball. And some people will just wrap it into what we call granny balls. They're just a big ball of rolled up yarn. So I just wanted to cover that, just a little the terminology. I'm now going to end, and I will come back to say goodbye when I have this fiber plied. So I am nearly done with the plying of this fiber. Something I forgot to mention earlier is that when you're doing, when you're plying, it's sometimes helpful if you put your fingers between the plies. It can help keep things from tangling up. You'll notice that one of my bobbins is nearly completely empty. The other bobbin still has fiber on it. There are a couple ways you can handle this. When I first started, I would just finish off when one bobbin was full. I'd have left over on the other, and I would take that and I would ply it with other fibers that making just, funny yarn, little craft yarn. But what I do now more than anything is once I get one bobbin empty, I will break off the other one and wind it on my ball winder, and I will ply from a center pull ball. Now there are different considerations that people talk about when they talk about plying from a center pull ball or plying ball. It can adjust your, I guess, twist and the amount of twist that you have in your singles just a little bit. I don't have a problem with it. My yarns are really for my own purpose, for enjoyment, and I do very simple knit projects and crochet projects with my yarns. So I am not, I'm not worried about a few yards being a little different. There's too much on this bobbin for me to do what we would call wrap it around your fingers in a butterfly type formation and ply it from a center pull ball there. If there was only a little bit left, I could do that and I wouldn't necessarily have to break off my single. But if I just take this, break it off at a different length than where my other single ended, and then come over here and put it on my ball winder, then I can have a center pull ball. Let me do that really quickly. When I when I take it off the ball winder, I try to be very careful not to lose my ends. And now what I have is I have a part that comes out pulling from the center. I have two ends. I can take my ply, I can match up one to the shorter end that I have and get some twist going. Get that one now incorporated. This is one of those times where you wish you had one more hand. Overlap this second end. This is not something I recommend if you have a very, very energetic single. If you have not let your singles rest for very long, this is not the easiest thing to do with certain fibers, but for most of your standard wool, it can work. You can end up with quite a rat's nest of yarn if you, or a bird's nest, I should say, of yarn. Either one, both of them will make nests out of yarn if you leave it out for them. But you can end up with a mess if you're not careful. I try to keep my thumb in the center, keeping the center of the ball open. I always try to have it so that the center part's coming out off the tip of my thumb, and the unwinding, it's wrapped around here, comes off as well, the tip. It is something that, it's a way for me to finish up the ends. Again, there is a little bit of a change in the way the twist is because of doing it this way. I've watched some other people talk about it, but it's not enough for it to be a problem for me. And the 5 to 10 yards that I'll have here, it's not a deal breaker in my projects, especially since I do tend to, as I said, when I finish this, I will take this and I will wash it, as in soak it in some soapy water, make sure there's no dye left that needs to come off of it, and I'll fool it just a little bit. In essence, I'm not gentle with most of my yarns. I want it to actually kind of felt just a little bit together. Not a big felt, a fooling. It is a different type of process. It's just same type of agitation, just not to the extreme. I want it to grab together and hold together. I like my yarns to be very sturdy and not split apart. And that is the end of my plying. I will wind this off onto a nitty knotty. Oh, I always put a little knot in the end. I think it just helps. It's my preference. I will wind this off on a nitty knotty. I will soak it, and I will full it, and I'll let it dry, and then I'll put a picture here at the end so that you can see my finished yarn. Thank you for joining me with another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric. I hope that you have had the opportunity to unwind and that you're enjoying this tour de fleece. Stay cool if you're in a hot climate, stay warm if you are in a cold climate, and we will see you with the next video. Bye-bye.